Boston Tea Party? How about a party of parity as Supercross heads to Foxborough with another new winner in Cole Davies last weekend and a raging title fight between Webb and Sexton?
Webb wins Seattle!
Get James Stewart's thoughts, stats you didn't realize, and more.
Yeah, welcome to SMX Insider. We are the Jasons, Weigandt and Thomas. Monster Energy, Supercross, and the SMX World Championship headed to Foxborough outside of Boston this weekend. Still a bit of a toss-up, I feel, in the 450 class, a thriller in Seattle. But JT, do you agree that it's an odd one where it didn't really prove anything either way? We're always looking for projection as to what does this race mean for the future. To me, it just means Sexton and Webb are both good and they're close.
It does, but I think there is a little bit of momentum swinging back and forth between the two. It really felt like Webb was on his way leaving Indy into the first off weekend of the year. And then Sexton did a great job of clawing that back, cut the points lead basically in half. And I think it was important for Webb to respond in Seattle, and he did just that. Now, it didn't feel like Sexton lost a lot of ground in the momentum. It was such a great battle that I think both of them left with a lot of confidence. But if you're just purely calling balls and strikes here, Webb took the points lead from 8 to 11 and bested Chase in a duel where Chase had the lead. So you have to feel good about things if you are Cooper Webb leading that particular event.
Yeah, and still a gauntlet to run through. More open stadiums, more chance of weather. And still shocking to note there's 6 races to go. So that 11 points, that is something that Sexton still can overcome, though, you believe?
Oh, for sure. And if you look at how strong Chase Sexton has been down the stretch in this particular series, he's got to like that too. And I think that's going to be for both of these guys. They're going to be looking for silver linings and why should I be confident? But to your point, yes, Chase Sexton is typically very strong at races like Denver and Salt Lake. So if it comes down to a couple of points into the end, I think Chase is going to feel like he has a real chance at stealing this championship, even if he is behind going into the finale.
Much to talk about on this show. We'll review 250 West in Seattle just because it was so wild and controversial. Deegan and Beaumare, yet another new winner with Cole Davies. And that spills over into the 250 East preview for Foxborough because if any rider wins for the rest of the year that hasn't won yet, it will become the season with the most winners in Supercross history across both classes. So that will be something to watch. Tom Vial hasn't won yet, so it's very much within reach. So we'll preview all of that on this episode. Big interview time. This is awesome. Haven't heard from our buddy James Stewart enough lately, so we're going to bring him in for the show. He'll also be on later to talk NXT Bets with Clinton. And James, you'll also be in the booth for 2 live NBC shows there coming up from Philadelphia and New Jersey. But let's talk this stretch run of the championship coming up. It's Sexton versus Webb.
Yeah, I've just been sitting back watching these two guys. At one point, we had 3 with Kenny in, and now you're starting to see guys like my brother, Malcolm Stewart, and some other guys coming in. But between Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb, it's a dogfight. It's really a dogfight. And I think Seattle was a perfect example of that. You saw Chase. I think he still probably has the most speed out of both of them, but Cooper Webb was able to somehow reel that race back in. And on a tough Seattle track, I know how gnarly that racetrack is. It is a lot easier being in second, but Cooper did what he needed to do. He allowed Chase, he was in front, he worked him, he kept running in the inside. I think right after you go past the mechanics area, you hit that double, then you hit that triple. That inside line that Cooper was just getting in and just showing a will to Chase was, I think, make or break of the whole race because he wasn't trying to pass him. What he was trying to do was just startle him and kind of mess up that whole section. And Cooper just does what Cooper did, and he was able to fight off. But you had 2 athletes out there going back and forth. And I think all year long that their season and how they operate played out in Seattle last weekend.
Well, looking down the stretch, we're going to get some weather. Whether it's this weekend or one of the next few, weather is going to play a role in this thing. So if you were in this championship, you've been in this spot many times, but you're battling for it, do you think there's a little bit of nervousness or pressure that kind of comes off when we have weather in the forecast? Like, how did you view that?
Yeah, when you bring weather in, it hurts. I mean, you start thinking about the things that could go wrong. I mean, whether you're leading the points, or like Cooper Webb or Chase Sexton, you would think a mindset would be Chase Sexton would be doing the rain dance. He needs those points, but in reality, when you're in that spot where he's at, there's no more mistakes. So a first corner or a lapper or something happening because of mud race, it could throw both of you guys championships. So I don't feel like if it's raining that it's going to benefit onset wise on either one. I think they're both going to be nervous about it. And it's just because of all the other things that's outside of your control that can happen. Other riders falling down, just crazy things like that. Once you get into the race, it's just racing. Believe it or not, whether the track's muddy, dry, those guys, if they're close to each other, it's going to seem like just like it was at Seattle, that's how they're going to race. But you get worried about the other things that can happen, and being so close to the end of the championship, you know, one of those mistakes for either one, your championship could be over and at no fault of your own.
Real quick, let's get one in on 250 East. Tom Vial has a 10-point lead. He has not won a race. Is it possible you think he could win the title without winning one?
Yeah, anything's possible. I would say his best shot of winning a race is probably going to be against his coast. I mean, you see, I mean, it's just so deep. So if you're asking me, I think RJ is probably going to end up giving him one, to be honest with you. And I think if RJ gives him one, whether Tom wins the race or not, then I think Tom can ride this thing out. But any kind of champion, they want to win. I don't think Tom wants to win without winning a race. So if you're asking me, I think he needs to. I think he needs to start this weekend. You know, I think he needs to go out there and try to win it. And if he does that, then obviously that answers your question. But who knows? With the showdown coming up, your best opportunity, if I'm Tom Vial, is to win on the East Coast and let the rest happen. All
right, that's going to be awesome stuff with two more of those East-West races on the docket. And yeah, there's not much room for error if you're a Hampshire or Hammaker. We'll see if they can rally. James, always good to talk to you. Yeah, we'll be in the booth together all summer long in Pro Motocross. We'll see you later in this show at NXT Bets. But always good to hear from you, man. 30-second board time, hot topics in the sport. And JT, 2025 just keeps on giving. Anything that can happen will. So there's all this controversy with Hayden Deegan from the previous weekend and a budding rivalry with Julian Beaumer. And it seemed like it was going to come to a head somehow, some way. And of course it does late in the race. They weren't even near each other on the track, but the race wasn't going to end without an incident. They run into each other, battle, and then words on the podium. Let's hear it.
I made a wrong swing on bike setup, and that's just how it goes. It's racing, and I'll take the blame on that one, though. I crashed first lap, put myself in a bad position. But, yeah, fought my way back up and made my way up to third. And, yeah, obviously everyone knows what happened to me these last 2 weeks. But Juju went out of his own hands to post that on his story, and it had my address and stuff. And now you're talking about my family, put my family in danger. So that's a whole different other scene. So I just told him, don't do that, dude. It ain't cool. And he obviously lit back. But, yeah, we'll see what happens from here on out.
To that situation, no worries. I ain't the only one who posted his address, so he can talk all he wants, but that's public record. Yeah, I ain't worried about it. He's got one coming for him in Philly.
So there you go. Like I said, this year is like, if it's going to happen, it's definitely going to happen. And they argue and pushing and shoving in the helmets. I believe they both got fined for that. I mean, do you have a take on any of this?
Well, this started months ago. These two have been jawing back and forth at each other about on the track stuff. So there were already hard feelings. And then we know, Hayden had some issues in the off week, and then Juju kind of leaned into that. So there's going to be responses in both directions. I think both of them don't care for each other. And then when you take personal shots back and forth, that's going to spill onto the racetrack. So thankfully it hasn't been too far out of line. Yes, maybe some inappropriate things, grabbing helmets, a little, love tap back and forth. But if you're looking for entertainment on the racetrack, I don't think you can ask for much more than this, because they're giving it to us. It's last lap battles and battles for the championship overall. This is what it's all about. So has it been perfect? Maybe not. But I think in the spirit of racing and entertainment, this is what we want.
Yeah, that's fair. And look, I know there are plenty of people that the Deegan antics, you either love it or hate it. If you're on the hate side, and I'm sure if you're mayor, it's not just about Seattle or one pass. It's probably years worth of stuff. So maybe I need to factor that in as well. I just didn't expect it to get that crazy, but this year does stuff like that. And meanwhile, no drama up front. It's kind of weird that Cole Davies wins his first race. He's brand new to the scene. He's only, 6 races into his career? And to me, it actually felt overdue for him to win one of these, and it reflected on the track. This wasn't shocking or surprising at all. He just went about his business and dominated. I think we could have saw this 2 months ago.
Yeah, he's a superstar in the making if he hasn't already arrived. And I think the most surprising aspect of this is we didn't really expect it until we did, and then we expected it to happen even sooner. It's been the wildest turn of events as far as expectations for a rider that maybe we've ever seen. And then you factor in his personality exploding the way it has too. This is awesome to watch, especially the upfront and personal perspective that I have getting to talk to him on the weekends. This kid has the entire package, and I would have argued I didn't know if he had any elements of the package a year ago, and here we are.
Yeah, the riding and the personality together. And visor tip to Ben Townley, the original Kiwi Supercross winner, and this wild stat. I mean, you and I were around when Ben Townley was winning races and a 250 East Championship. Well, apparently that was happening around the same time that Cole Davies was born, which is just sad and shocking all at once. And if you look at Ben Townley's Instagram, he put up video of teaching Cole Davies to ride whoops a couple years ago. So they know each other well. He helped pave the way in so many ways. So shout out to you, Ben Townley, for that one. We will transfer over to 250 East, which begins this weekend. Just as wild as the West, JT. Actually, maybe even wilder statistically.
Yeah, this 250 East class has been a battle, and there's been so much up and down. The most surprising thing is you look up and Tom Vialle has a 10-point lead. Now, we know that the Max Anstey injury certainly affected this, but I would ask you, does it feel like Tom Vialle should have a 10-point lead in this championship right now with 0 wins to his name?
No, the only thing I can point to is we know, for example, that Cooper Webb has a blueprint for how he wins, and it never seems as good as it actually is, right? He just beat everyone straight up in Seattle, and there's still going to be the, well, does he have the speed question? Vialle's different, but the same in he has an unorthodox way of doing it. I mean, it's really the way he did it last year. Yes, he did win some races last year, but I don't know if we really left races last year saying he is the best guy, but he was champ, and that could very well happen again. I do believe that Hamaker and Hampshire can get this done, but we go back to what we said about Chase Sexton a few weeks ago. They do not have any room for error. One bad race for either one of them, I think it's over. So, heck, JT, do you think Vialle could do this without even winning a race? I think he could.
It's certainly possible. The one thing I'm going to throw in is we have 2 showdowns still remaining, and one of them, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. I think at Salt Lake, it's a little bit more predictable, but the showdowns have been such a crucial variable in these championships that could he win without? Yes. But I think things would kind of have to go his way in those showdowns. He would need RJ and Hamaker to not be their best selves. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. And I would throw back to 1997. Tim Ferry wins the 125 East Coast back when it was 125s without winning a race. He bests our own Ricky Carmichael and Stefan Roncada, and also ran in that championship. He got a lot of second places, but he wasn't the headline. He wasn't the rider people were talking about. There was this rookie of Carmichael and this French rider Roncada who had burst onto the scene. And then Ferry ends up holding the number 1 plate at the end of the year. So could it be the same way? Possibly. But then again, he's going to do it with the number 1 plate.
Yeah.
So throw everything out the window, but it is a remarkable thing to, talk about him having a 10-point lead, and he really hasn't been the story as of yet.
I think last year also people were saying it helped. Maybe he's not the best in the whoops, but we had muddy, rutted, mushy tracks. So whoop jumping, well, guess what? We might get that again all the way through to the end. So he might win 2 years in a row the same way. I just think that's so intriguing to do it differently. And that's the perfect transition to this 450 points chase. As you mentioned at the top of the show, it's 11 between Webb and Sexton. It really is, to me, the physical versus the mental. We know what an athlete and the talent and the raw speed and ability that Chase Sexton has. Just jumping that big rhythm that he did in Seattle shows that, and the time he could make up when he got it right. But then the grit of Cooper Webb. What a great matchup. And 2 riders that know each other pretty well. Actually, if you look back, JT, the last couple of years, they've been really close on the track and in the standings.
It is, and to me, it's remarkable that they do it in completely different ways. Their styles don't mirror each other at all. Their strengths are really not in the same places at all. I don't know that Webb has been the fastest qualifier ever. I'm sure he has at some point, but it's certainly not a common occurrence. You contrast that with Sexton, who was his calling card in 2023. We almost expected it week in and week out. You have this guy that is the master of racecraft, and in any high pressure situation, you can count on him. And then Chase Sexton, he's the rider where we're always wondering, can he hold it together in those most crucial moments? So they are in many ways on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, yet here we are, and they're clearly the two best guys, and it's going to be decided between the two of them for this championship. So it's a very interesting case study in how to go about winning a championship.
And awfully hard to predict, especially when, once again, we're still seeing that other riders can get in there. This time they finished 1-2 in Seattle, but Roxanne and Justin Cooper and others were factors in the battle. So we might get them pulling away from everyone else at the end. Doesn't seem to be there quite yet. Makes it awfully hard to predict. But let's bring in two experts to try to do just that.
All righty, James Stewart, let's talk some NXT bets. We've got Foxborough on the calendar here. We're headed into the great Northeast. We got a string of 4 races ahead of us. Let's talk the podium. They've got the top 3, Cooper Webb at a -255, Sexton -221, Roxon -103. Those guys are the favorites for the podium spots. But James, AP has been up there in the last 3 or 4 rounds. He's looking at a +183 for the podium. It seems like the odds makers are maybe insulting Aaron Plessinger here.
Well, I wouldn't look at it insulting him. I just think they realize how good Ken Roxon is, hurt or not. I mean, for him, a guy with a shoulder injury, the toughest race, even outside of, I would say even on top of Daytona, would have been that track last weekend. So for him to be able to put up the performance he was able to do, obviously it started going south towards the end, but I just think they see how much, skills Ken Roxon has, and being towards the end of the season, you probably just want to try to get through it and do the best you can before you take off time or whatever it is. So I'm still going to lean towards AP or my brother just because of that shoulder injury that Roxon is dealing with. But yeah, the odds makers, they just know how good that 94 Suzuki is. And, he's always, we thought he might not even race last weekend the way he was looking in practice. And then he comes out and he's leading the main event, battling with Cooper and Chase. It's just what Ken does.
Well, let's keep with this theme because we got a head-to-head battle too, where we got Ken Roxon, who obviously had a great race in Seattle. They've got him in a head-to-head with Plessinger. They got Kenny at a -160 in the head-to-head. They got Plessinger at a 120. And like I said, let's just stick to the last 3 races. Kenny's gone 7.54. So while he led laps, the reality is AP's gone 5.33. AP's taken the advantage in the head-to-head, but you never know, right? Every gate drop is different, James.
Yeah, every gate drop is different, and I think that's really what it's going to come down to is, I can see the scenario with when you're hurt, like last weekend, if Kenny's out front, for some reason being out front at Supercross, it heals a lot. Like it really does. If he gets a bad start, I don't see the Kenny Roxon that we saw in the beginning part of the year coming up through the pack like he did, from getting a bad start, being able to come up and battling with those guys. So it really is going to be dependent on Ken Roxon and his starts, because you really can't look at how practice was. I mean, he was off the pace. So he gets another start, then he'll go there. And I think the team, atmosphere, Larry Brooks, and how good Ken has been riding, then I feel like he'll be up there. But history would say, in the way AP's doing it, I would say what he does is more likely to repeat because he's doing it every weekend, no matter start or not. He's been getting good starts, and I'm still going to lean towards AP on this. If I'm picking him for the podium, I got to pick him to beat Ken Roxon in the head-to-head. But no disrespect to my German chocolate. Ken's always dangerous for a win. Not only that, a podium for sure.
Well, to your point, AP did have a great start at Seattle, though he ran long and he did run your brother there off the track. But another long start headed into Foxborough. James, thanks for the insight. And folks, make sure you go check out your local sports book and check the lines. They change throughout the week. And we'll see you in Foxborough.
All right, thanks, boys. Now back to the 30-second board. This reel is fake. It was hard to even know what was going on. Honda, we actually held a live show on Friday, JT, in Seattle. We had Lars Lindstrom on, and he said, we will announce on Tuesday who the fill-in rider for the Lawrence brothers will be. And I'm like, oh, no, that's going to be April 1st. So I don't know what to believe. This is real? Dean Wilson really will be racing?
He is, but, I mean, is it Grandpa Earl?
Yeah.
Or is it Dean Wilson?
Yeah.
I think Dean Wilson's chances of doing well down the stretch are much better than Grandpa Earl. And that's not a slight against the vet riders that are out there watching this, but factory Honda maybe wouldn't be the perfect setup for Grandpa Earl to go up against the likes of Webb and Sexton. But kudos to factory Honda for having fun, because let's remember, over the course of Honda HRC's history, they were always known as the elite, but also a little stuffy, not the most playful team to be around. And I don't know if it's Lars Lindstrom, I don't know if it's just a change in policy, but they seem to have fun with things at every turn now. And you can't help but think that kind of reflects onto Jet Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence and the mood they have at the races. And in the end, it's leading to success. So great job to them. Great job to Dean Wilson for making himself available and having fun with this thing. Because in the end, it's dirt bikes. You know, we're here to have fun and be entertained, and this is certainly that.
There's even more intrigue for next year. The silly season, which usually does start to happen February, March, April, is in full swing. And JT, you know, almost all of the 450 riders' deals are up. Lawrence's are locked in. That's pretty much about it. So it always starts at the top, and that's going to be Chase Sexton. And now we hear Eli Tomac is shopping for new deals, wants to keep racing. This is going to be awfully intriguing. We heard, Chase Sexton, he's signed with Kawasaki. I believe what that actually means is he's entertaining offers, and they made him one. He hasn't signed anything. He could go back to KTM or maybe someone else. This is going to be really exciting to watch.
Because there are so many different aspects to this. And you're right, nothing is going to happen until the top dominoes fall, and that's Chase Sexton and Eli Tomac. And if you wanted to really even throw in another wrinkle, you could even say Hayden Deegan's contract that, you know, will start in 2026 is in here as well, because he is going to absorb a lot of someone's budget. One of these teams is going to sign him, and that's a huge hit to the budget that they wouldn't be able to sign someone else. So there's a lot of jockeying going around, and you look at guys like Jason Anderson, some of these other guys, they have to kind of wait. You know, they don't get first billing simply because they haven't been winning. So when you see Chase Sexton signs, or it's kind of everybody knows anyway, then you'll start to see some of the other dominoes fall. But to me, this is one of the most interesting times. And we get to go out there on track walk, you know, on Saturday mornings. And I always look for the head nods at some of the team managers and other riders that they're courting. It's a lot of speculation, but yeah, it's fun.
Let's go back to 250 class. I just want to point this out. We said at the top of the show, we teased this. If we get one more new winner in any class this year, it will be the most of all time. The 450 class has been dynamic. The 250 class has been nuts. I can show you a graphic here. Hayden Deegan has 2 wins this year. He's the only 250 rider to win more than one. That is absolutely insane. Look at this list of winners.
It's going to happen. I'm going to call it right now. We are going to have another winner. When you look at the weather, when you look at the fact that Tom Vial hasn't won a race yet, and there's so many riders that are all riding equally well, I just think it's a no-brainer. So I'm willing to take the L if I'm wrong, but it has been that type of season. And to me, the weather is the biggest variable. You're going to see a guy like Marchbanks or somebody like that find a way to get it done. Vial is the likely candidate, but I think we're going to get there. We have a lot of racing left, and there's somebody else is going to break through.
Okay, SMX Medical Update. We bring on Dr. Joe McGinley of the McGinley Clinic. We were just saying this. We have some good news. We don't have new injuries to talk about here. We can update things we were talking about prior to Seattle, starting with Jordan Smith, who, kudos to him. He had the ribs, spleen, comes back to race at Seattle. And then Dr. Joe, he probably hit the ground a dozen times. So this dude's tough. We know that. But that had to be hard to watch since you know him well.
Yeah, first, you mentioned it. Great that we're not talking about a new injury and we can update fans on riders that are healing and getting back out there. But yeah, watching Jordan crash out there, I was watching on TV and I was holding my breath every time. And you're right. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. Those ribs are not healed yet, right? So the broken bones, broken ribs are still there. The spleen is likely mostly healed at this point. But every time he hit the ground, I was holding my breath, just hoping that, it wasn't a major injury, didn't re-aggravate it. And look, he pushed through. He got through. He got points. Even at the end when he crashed, he moved up through the pack nicely in that main event. So great to see him back out there. he wasn't on the bike for a bit, so that probably contributed to some of what we were seeing this past weekend. He had to take quite a few weeks off, not riding at all, to allow those injuries to heal. But again, he's still dealing with broken ribs, and that's not fun when you're an athlete and you're pushing your lungs, you're pushing your cardiovascular endurance, you're breathing heavy. That's going to hurt. And then hitting the ground on top of that, just, a little insult to injury on that as well.
So now we talk about Ken Roczen, who, again, we also talked about before. Seattle has the separated shoulder. Dr. McGinley sounds like he learned a little more about his situation and how severe it is. But at the same time, he rode awesome. He's battling for the win for a while.
Yeah, he mentioned the results that it was almost completely torn. Again, I didn't see the images. He got an MRI. Based on what he said, I'd probably put that in a grade 2 separation of that shoulder, probably close to grade 3. But again, the fact that he said almost torn would technically put him in the grade 2 category. But you couldn't tell by his riding out there. It looked like he had a fully healed shoulder, and he's out there racing and competing. But again, towards the end of the race, you could tell he's losing a little bit of steam. That shoulder has to be sore. There has to be some concern on his part when he's out there hitting the whoops and hitting the jumps of the stability of that shoulder. The key for him for the rest of the season is making sure that he's going to maintain the health of that and get that healed.
All right, so he's going to be on the fly trying to heal from that one and still scratch out podiums, points, and all that. And hopefully we don't have any additional new injuries to talk about from here on out. We'll see what happens. Thanks for the time, Dr. McGinley.
Thank you.
We will have SMX Next back on the track this weekend in Foxborough. We mentioned that somehow out of nowhere, Cole Davies was also overdue for a win. I feel like that's the case for the Muck-Off FXR Club MX Yamaha team, who's had 2 sure SMX Next wins ripped from them, mostly with Alex Fedorostov, who led Daytona until he got a flat, then led Birmingham until he crashed. His teammate Ryder Malinowski crashed on the last lap while leading. So, yeah, if your club, these have become must-wins, oddly.
So Landon Gordon has been the guy to beat. He had a crash in Birmingham, we know that, but he had won 2 prior to that. So I'm looking for, okay, it's going to be cold, it might be wet. Who is going to have a breakout performance in that? Maybe it's Malinowski again. Wisconsin, surely he's raced and ridden in those types of conditions, but we're going to learn a lot about who can overcome adversity on a really tough Foxborough racetrack on Saturday.
Okay, you said tough racetrack. Let's explain that exactly. Get to the track map.
Well, let's hope that this is the racetrack we get, because if it really does rain a lot, maybe they have to make some changes. But yeah, long start is the thing that jumps off the page immediately. That opens up a lot of the outside gates. So watch for Justin Cooper to swing out wide. Even if he qualifies well, I think he'll go out wide. That's where he likes to be on these starts. But the rest of the racetrack, pretty standard. Big rhythm right after the start. Pretty long set of whoops. We'll see if they stick to the 9 whoop rule or not. But the one thing I'm hoping for is that the weather isn't bad enough that they have to make big changes, because on paper, this track looks pretty good.
Okay, time to run the numbers. Let's bring in the king of the calculator, the staff statistician, Clinton Fowler. Clinton, another close finish and victory for Cooper Webb. I don't want to sound like I'm picking favorites here, but I will say I am a fan of the way Cooper Webb wins. When he wins, they're almost always compelling and exciting to watch all the way to the end, and Seattle, no different.
This is the 12th time he's won in under a second in his 34 wins. So a third of the time he's winning by less than a second. Just absolutely incredible. What's amazing, JT, is versus his competitors, versus his contemporaries. You got Webb winning 12 of his 34 by under a second, but a guy like Eli Tomac, 63 wins, including those Triple Crown races, and he only won twice in under a second. And a guy like Chase Sexton has 0 wins in under a second. So JT, just an incredible difference in the way Cooper Webb wins.
It is, and there's no right or wrong way to go about this, and I think it comes down to Eli Tomac. When he has won, he has just typically dominated the event, where there was really no doubt about what the end result was going to be. Where I think Cooper Webb, maybe he's aware of where his strength is, and if he doesn't have the speed to pull away, he wants to get into this dogfight late in the race because he knows he is so good at that. And I think about those races where he bested Roczen late, and Sexton has been kind of the victim as of late as well. But it is remarkable because this is a skill. Knowing how to beat someone in the last couple of laps is not an accident. And I don't know if it's just inherently ingrained in him or if it's something that he really thinks about and tries to figure out ways to outsmart people. But there's no doubt about the fact that he is very, very good at late race duels.
Let's go to the LCQ. We got to give a tip of the visor here because we mentioned on the broadcast Kyle Chisholm in recorded history, which is 03 and on, when we have all the stats in front of us. This is now the winningest rider ever in LCQs, Clinton.
Indeed, Weege. He broke a tie with Nick Way. The two of them going into Seattle had 12 LCQ wins. And with that win in that absolutely incredible LCQ race, he got number 13. And JT, you're familiar with this all-time list. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, you sit 5th on this list. You got the same number of starts, but not quite the number of wins, JT. Talk to us about living the LCQs.
That's all right. It's not about me, but yes, I have certainly been in this spot many, many times. And I think for Kyle Chisholm, it just proves that he is a clutch performer and he can stay cool under pressure. You know, he had the last gate pick in the LCQ. His bike was still bent from the heat race crash, and he still was able to methodically pick his way forward, not make the critical mistake at the critical time. And that is such an underrated part of this story. You don't have to be the fastest guy. If you could just do consistent laps and you can stay out of trouble, a la A-Rod and Grant Harlan on the last lap, good things tend to happen to you. So sometimes it's not about what you do, it's about what you don't get involved in these LCQs. And obviously Kyle Chisholm has that figured out.
All right, that's some cool data. We'll be back in your original home area, New England, this weekend. Thanks for the numbers, Clinton.
Looking forward to see you guys in Foxborough.
Okay, and speaking of that phenomenal LCQ record for Kyle Chisholm, this is the wildest way to win one in the 450 LCQ. As Anthony Rodriguez headed for victory, he crashed and took Grant Harlan out with him. And if you really want to hear how exciting it is, let's give you this Spanish announcer's call with our man Edgar.
Aquí en la sección de ritmo importante para Rodríguez. Cerrando la curva, por dentro, vámonos.
Ojo como aquí Chisholm sí ejecuta el 3-3. Se va a meter por dentro y ahora sí no va a ser tan buena onda con Harlan.
¡Vámonos!
No corta por dentro y hace
¡Vámonos!
lo mismo. Oh, mira.
Y ahora Rodríguez pasa al primer lugar.
Noren comete un error con la zanja, se cruza, le pega las pacas. Y de primero, Noren se acaba de ir a cuarto.
¡Qué tremenda competencia! Y ahora el líder, una última vuelta. Rodríguez en primer lugar. Va para los Whoops. Vamos apretando, acelerando. Yo creo que vamos con todo el... Sí se puede, todo el mundo empujando a Rodríguez.
Todo Latinoamérica
todo
aquí,
Latinoamérica.
Vía la transmisión de Telemundo Deportes, apoyando a Anthony Rodríguez.
Vámonos, Anthony. Te tienes ahí encima, Harlan. Vámonos, 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 vámonos. Vámonos, 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 cierra, vámonos. Están tratando de cazar. ¡Oh! ¡No, no, no, no!
Y dos de los primeros 4 pilotos se caen en esa sección de ritmo tan complicada. Anthony Rodríguez tenía la victoria en las manos. Y ahora es Kyle Chisholm.
We love the LCQ. We've always loved the LCQ, JT. Maybe you didn't love them so much when you were in them, but this is what it's all about, these races. They never cease.
They are fun to watch, and I don't know that you can add more excitement than Edgar did there, but that's what he does. That's why he's in the role he is. But to your point, yes, they're not much fun for riders. No one wants to be in the LCQ. That's why they're so chaotic, is because everybody's taking way more risk than they should or want to, or definitely their insurance provider wants them to. It's chaos in these LCQs. So for riders, you don't want to be there, but you also know that you have to step up and deliver in those moments. And Kyle Chisholm's done it better than anybody else has.
Grant Harlan also crashed away a transfer in the heat race all by himself in the last lap, then did everything right in the LCQ, only to get taken out by a flying motorcycle of A-Rod. That's life in the last chance qualifier. Championship heads to Foxborough. One more piece of info. That is when and how to watch it. So everything live on Peacock. or the SMX Video Pass outside the United States. Race day live coverage of qualifying starts at 1:30 Eastern on Saturday afternoon. It's April 5th, and racing starts at 7 o'clock Eastern. We'll both be there. I keep saying 2025 keeps delivering, so I can't even imagine what's in store next. What more can we see at this point?
Well, it's the most unintentional, exciting season we've ever had. We lost some of the stars, but it has really, we filled in the gap. Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton are giving us a championship that we could only dream about. So kudos to them. Kudos to everybody for being a part of this thing. It's been a fantastic year thus far.
All right, everybody. We will see you on Saturday as the Northeastern swing of Monster Energy Supercross begins.